The heavy iron door swings shut. Inside Lahore jail, a young revolutionary sits in isolation, counting down the days to his own hanging. The British authorities, and even some well-meaning friends, offer him a final piece of advice. Use these last hours to pray. Seek divine forgiveness before facing the gallows. He flatly refuses. He won't pray, he won't repent, and he won't ask for salvation. To the outside world, this total rejection of faith looks like the ultimate arrogance. His peers assume his sudden fame has gone to his head. This assumption raises a profound question. Is Bhagat Singh's refusal to bow before God the stubborn pride of a famous youth, or is it the anchor of a philosophy forged in iron? Singh approaches the accusation of vanity with cold logic. To have an ego regarding God, he argues, a person would have to believe they are a direct rival to the Almighty, or a divine being themselves. He makes no such claim. He simply arrives at a complete absence of belief. He rejects the very premise that a conscious, supreme entity is directing the universe and all. He developed this worldview through exhaustive, solitary reading. Immersing himself in the works of revolutionary realists like Karl Marx and Mikhail Bakunin, he systematically dismantled his own childhood beliefs. The comforting, poetic myths he grew up with dissolved under the weight of strict logic. He realized that to understand the world, he had to examine material conditions, not heavenly promises. He traded the soothing narcotic of blind faith for the harsh light of realism. Facing execution, he knew he had only his own psychological endurance to rely on. Instead of defending his disbelief, Singh shifts to the offensive. He puts the concept of an almighty creator on trial, using the state of the world as his primary evidence. He poses a devastating paradox. If a supreme being possesses absolute power and infinite knowledge, why deliberately design a planet saturated with starvation, tragedy, and systemic exploitation? If the defense argues that God allows human misery for his own mysterious amusement, the implications are horrifying. That logic makes the creator a tyrant far crueler than Emperor Nero watching Rome burn for sport. Or compare it to Genghis Khan. How can humanity worship an architect who oversees more daily, systemic pain than history's most ruthless warlords inflicted in a lifetime? The philosophical verdict is stark. A creator of a permanently agonizing world cannot be entirely benevolent. He is either incompetent, bound by constraints, or actively cruel. Faced with this reality, religious defenders often point to complex theological frameworks to explain away the suffering of innocent people. The theory of karma, for instance, suggests that individuals born into extreme, inescapable poverty are being punished for the sins of a past life. It places the blame for starvation squarely on the starving. Singh dismantles this using the logic of criminology. Any ethical system of justice must be reformative. The absolute goal of punishment should be to improve a person's character and reintegrate them into society. Divine punishment fails this test entirely. Condemning someone to a lifetime of social hatred and hunger doesn't purify the soul. It breeds bitterness and desperation, effectively forcing people into further crime just to survive. These doctrines aren't mechanisms of universal justice. They are convenient, manufactured excuses designed to make us look away from preventable human inequality. Singh traces this philosophical critique directly to the immediate reality outside his cell walls: British imperialism and capitalist exploitation. By convincing the oppressed that their suffering is merely the will of the Almighty, the ruling class pacifies massive populations. It keeps millions submissive, waiting for a reward in the afterlife instead of fighting for their rights today. Over time, established religious institutions naturally align themselves with power. They evolve to become the strongest defenders of kings, tycoons, and tyrants. Religion, in Singh's final analysis, operates as psychological infrastructure. It is a system designed from the ground up to protect stolen wealth and suppress human rebellion. This leaves one final, unavoidable question. If there is no supreme creator, how did the universal concept of God originate? Drawing on the principles of evolutionary biology, Singh points to a primitive survival mechanism. Early humans created the idea of God to cope with the profound terrors and extreme limitations of the natural world. Faced with terrifying weather, disease, and predators, humanity invented an imaginary crutch. They required a comforting parental figure to provide an illusion of control over the unknown. As humanity gradually develops its own scientific and social power, that ancient psychological crutch becomes a heavy chain. Society cannot achieve true liberation while still clinging to childhood fears. True progress demands the courage to question every old faith. It requires replacing passive prayer with human reason, self-reliance, and collective action. Which brings us back to the damp, quiet cell in Lahore. Bhagat Singh knows the execution date is set and inevitable. A religious martyr goes to the gallows expecting a heavenly reward or a favorable reincarnation. Singh has stripped away all those comforting illusions. He understands that the moment the hangman pulls the lever and the floor drops, it is the absolute, permanent end. His consciousness will simply cease to exist. Walking into that void, knowing it is the absolute end, sacrificing your one finite life for the freedom of humanity without expecting a single reward in return, is not an act of ego. It is the very definition of revolutionary courage.